Want to know a magic trick that will let you get your writing done faster? I struggled through writing my scripts slowly until I found this amazing tool. SuperWhisper helps me get my scripts done faster than ever before, and I just have to tell you a little bit about it. So a few months ago, I learned about SuperWhisper from one of the founders of Olama. Somehow he had met the developer of SuperWhisper and thought that I might like to try it out. I did, but it had some weaknesses that I just couldn't get past. The big thing was the way it pasted results into an application, and it just didn't work with my remapped keyboard. All of that changed about a year ago, and I started using it. In fact, I started paying for it. And then they got added to SetApp, and that's how I use it today. So that's a lot of stuff that probably doesn't make any sense yet. So let's go back and go into a little bit more detail about what this thing is. So about a year and a half ago, OpenAI introduced the Whisper model, or set of models. This takes an audio file, splits it into 30-second chunks, and then figures out the text of the spoken audio in the file. It's not always the fastest model out there, but it's open and pretty accurate, especially when using the larger models. OpenAI offers Whisper as a service, and you can use that, and most folks think that is the only option. But when they release the models, they also release the code to run it. You could then run it on your machine using Python. But then, about 6 months later, a Bulgarian named Georgi Gurganov released whisper.cpp on his GitHub repo. Now, this is the same guy who came up with Llama CPP that allowed for things like Olama to exist. This code made it a bit more usable in more places, and it's still updated, while the original OpenAI code hasn't seen an update in 8 months. I have a video from October 2022 that shows how to use the OpenAI program against any audio you have. And while it worked, it wasn't super convenient. Since then, lots of other programs have come out, some free, some paid for, that work with Whisper. And they all have different levels of automation built in. A lot of tools include Whisper as a small part of what they do, but it feels like an afterthought for most of them. I have 2 tools on my Mac that use Whisper, Mac Whisper and SuperWhisper. I use Mac Whisper to generate subtitle files for my videos, but SuperWhisper is super easy to run and use anytime I need to generate a lot of text from my voice. At first, I didn't think I'd use it much because every time I've done speech to text, the results haven't been that great. And the first few tries I had with SuperWhisper weren't that great either. It turned out that I'd loaded up the smallest model because I thought I wanted something super fast. It wasn't until much later that I tried the largest model, and that's when I saw fantastic results. With the small models, you get sort of good spelling on most of the words, but there's no punctuation. But with the largest model, everything is just perfect. It's incredibly good. Let's try this right now. I've opened up a blank page in Obsidian, and you can see that my cursor is here in the editor. Then I'll go ahead and press Option Space, which is my keyboard shortcut to start SuperWhisper. And I'll just start saying something. I think SuperWhisper is awesome, and here's an example of me speaking to a text file and having everything just show up like magic. Yep, that's pretty great and super accurate. It's got the comma in there, it put the dot at the end of the sentence, and those things there are things that didn't show up when I used those smaller models. There are a bunch of other features in SuperWhisper, but frankly, I don't really use any of them. I just think about what I want to say. I press Option Space to trigger SuperWhisper, and I say those things. And then I press Option Space again. I wait maybe a couple of seconds or so, and then what I've said, it just pasted into the text editor, just like magic. Now, this isn't everything I do to edit or create a script. I initially do an audio transcription using SuperWhisper, then I let it sit either for a few hours or maybe even the next day. Then I go through and I edit it to make sure that it still sounds like me and it's not wishy-washy and goes in weird directions. When I'm pretty happy that the script sounds really good, then I'll copy it into my teleprompter app and do a recording of the video. Now, pretty much every video I've made in the last 6 months has started in SuperWhisper, and I think it's a pretty core part of how I make my content. And because of that, I think the cost is actually pretty fair. It's about $8.50 per month, or you can do it at $85 a year. And SuperWhisper is Mac only, so if you're on any other platform, it's not going to work for you. But I'm on a Mac, and I do everything on the Mac, so it works really well for me. That said, I'm sure there are plenty of other tools just like SuperWhisper for Windows or for Linux, and it's going to be up to you to find that kind of tool. I assume they're going to have maybe a similar price for doing what they do, and I think whatever tool you choose, it's going to be worth it. Once you get used to using it to generate content, scripts, or documents, or whatever you create. Do you use any sort of audio transcription tools for whatever you make? I'd love to know more about what you're using in the comments below. If you're interested in this kind of content, you can also subscribe to my newsletter at technoevangelist.com/newsletter. Thanks so much for watching. Goodbye.